Please subscribe to the channel to watch the latest videos.
Nikki Haley jokes about fellow presidential candidate Ron DeSantis's boots. We'll see if he can run in M, Haley said of her GOP rival, who has been accused of using footwear to appear taller. Nikki Haley poked fun at one of her rivals in the Republican presidential campaign, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, over allegations he is wearing boots with added insoles to make him appear taller. Are you wearing higher heels than Ron DeSantis next week at the debate so you can look taller than him on the stage? Charlamagne the God, guest host of Comedy Central's The Daily Show, asked Haley on Wednesday night. I don't know. We'll have to figure that out, said Haley, the former United Nations ambassador and the only woman in the Republican presidential field. Then she added, I've always talked about my high heels. I've always said, don't wear them if you can't run in them. So we'll see if he can run in them. The campaign of former President Donald Trump, whose lead in polls over his GOP rivals has grown larger in recent months, has made boot jokes about DeSantis for months, but the discussion about the heeled footwear broke into the mainstream in a big way this week. Haley's joke came a day after Politico magazine published an analysis in which 3 experts in bootmaking and shoemaking explained why they believed there was truth to the idea of DeSantis boosting his height with footwear. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert also referenced Politico's analysis in its opening monologue Wednesday night. The scandal is that DeSantis isn't wearing the boots for fashion, Colbert said. America's top cobblers believe that inside his boots DeSantis is probably wearing height-boosting insoles. This is no time for foot fetishes, DeSantis said Thursday night during an appearance on Newsmax, the conservative television network. We've got serious problems as a country, he told host Eric Balling, before announcing a challenge to the frontrunner. I know Donald Trump and a lot of his people are focusing on things like footwear, the governor said, and he added that if Trump can summon the courage to attend the next debate, I'll wear a boot on my head. Trump has declined to attend the first 2 Republican presidential debates and is not expected to attend the third in Miami on November 8. A July Washington Post profile of DeSantis's wife, Casey, noted that she selected the governor's footwear. She knew the cowboy boots he should wear, even though, at first, he complained that they hurt his feet, until a staffer suggested he buy dress shoes instead, at which point he said, Casey got them for me, and that was the end of the conversation about the cowboy boots, the profile reads. But it was DeSantis's appearance in late September on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher that kicked the attention on the presidential candidate's footwear into high gear. DeSantis wore a dark blue suit and cowboy boots and was seated for an amicable conversation with the host, who briefly mentioned his footwear. Though Maher acknowledged that people do wear cowboy boots with a suit, the host added, but there were no cowboys in Florida, Ron. The governor smiled and said, we're one of the top cattle states in America and that in the interior of Florida, nothing but cattle ranches. Oh, Maher said. All right. Well, I stand corrected. That appearance made its way around social media, with one TikTok clip of DeSantis seated on the show behind text that read, tell me he's not wearing hidden heels. The 9-second video, posted October 4, had more than 14 million views and 1.2 million likes as of Thursday evening. During an interview on the PBD podcast last week, DeSantis was asked about the widely seen TikTok video about his footwear. This on TikTok went viral, said the host, Patrick Bet-David. This thing got 1.2 million likes. And some people are wondering. DeSantis interrupted to say he was unaware of what the host was talking about. What are they? I don't even I haven't seen that, he said. They have not shown this to you? Okay, Bet-David said. What they're trying to say with this is that in your boots, you have heels. No, DeSantis replied. Those are just standard, off-the-rack boots. Delving further into the issue, the host then asked the governor for his height. 5'11", DeSantis said. Okay. Why don't you wear tennis shoes and dress shoes? Bet-David asked. DeSantis replied that he does, when he works out. Speaking at a rally Thursday in Houston, Trump mentioned the boots as he recalled DeSantis asking for his endorsement in his gubernatorial race, tears in his eyes, nobody would even believe it, Trump said. I don't know if he was wearing those same boots. I didn't notice that. I don't care either. That I don't care about. Marianne Levine contributed to this report. Democrats plan to subpoena wealthy benefactors of Supreme Court justices. Senate Democrats announced plans Monday to vote to subpoena a pair of wealthy conservatives and a judicial activist who have underwritten or organized lavish travel for some Supreme Court justices, a move that adds to the pressure on the High Court to strengthen its ethics policies. Senate Judiciary Committee leaders said they would vote as soon as November 9 to authorize subpoenas for information from Texas billionaire Harlan Crow, a close friend and benefactor of Justice Clarence Thomas, and from Leonard Leo, the conservative judicial activist. Senate Democrats do not need the vote of any Republican on the committee to authorize the subpoenas. No separate vote by the full Senate is necessary. Democratic lawmakers are seeking detailed information about the full extent of Crow's gifts to Thomas. News reports about the justice's failure over many years to report private jet travel, real estate deals and other gifts from Crow have prompted calls for the court to strengthen its ethics rules and for greater transparency about the justice's potential conflicts and recusal decisions. By accepting these lavish, undisclosed gifts, the justices have enabled their wealthy benefactors and other individuals with business before the court to gain private access to the justices while preventing public scrutiny of this conduct. Judiciary Committee Chairman Richard J. Durbin, Democrat, Illinois, and Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, Democrat, Rhode Island, said in the joint announcement. It is imperative that we understand the full extent of how people with interests before the court are able to use undisclosed gifts to gain private access to the justices. Senate Democrats have backed legislation that would impose disclosure rules on the court that are as strict as those that apply to members of the House and the Senate. Chief Justice John G. Roberts, Jr. has suggested the court would act on its own as an independent branch of government to demonstrate to the public that it adheres to the highest standards of conduct. 3 other justices, Elena Kagan, Brett M. Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett, have publicly stated in recent months that the court should or would adopt a formal ethics policy. In May, Senate committee leaders asked Crow for an itemized list of gifts he has made to Thomas that are worth more than $415, which is the maximum value allowed for gifts to federal judges, including the justices, that are not disclosed. The lawmakers also sought a full accounting of the lodging and transportation Crow has provided to the justice and his wife, Virginia Ginny Thomas. In response, Crow's attorney sent a letter saying the committee had not identified a valid legislative purpose for its investigation and did not have the power to probe his personal friendship with the justice. Through negotiations, Crow subsequently offered to provide the committee with responses to a subset of its requests, and only for the past 5 years, which the senators called inadequate. Crow has said he never tried to influence Thomas's decision-making on the court. Thomas has said he thought he did not need to disclose the free trips from a personal friend. In a statement Monday, Crow's office said he offered the committee extensive information despite the serious constitutional and privacy concerns presented to the committee, which were ignored and remain unaddressed. Crow's office asserted that the committee has already passed the legislation for which lawmakers say they need the requested information. It's clear this is nothing more than a stunt aimed at undermining a sitting Supreme Court justice for ideological and political purposes, Crow's office said. Leo struck a defiant tone in a statement Monday night, saying he would not bow to the vile and disgusting liberal McCarthyism that seeks to destroy the Supreme Court simply because it follows the Constitution rather than their political agenda. The committee said Monday that it would also vote to issue a subpoena to conservative donor Robin Arkley too. ProPublica reported that Arkley provided Justice Samuel A. Alito Jr. with a free fishing trip to Alaska in 2008 that was organized by Leo. Alito has defended his decision not to disclose the trip in his annual financial report. Federal ethics law requires top officials from all branches of government, including Supreme Court justices, to file annual disclosures listing investments, gifts, and outside income. The justices are facing intense pressure from Democratic lawmakers and transparency advocates because they do not have an ethics policy that applies specifically to the 9 justices. The Chief Justice could fix this problem today and adopt a binding code of conduct, Durbin and Whitehouse added in their statement. As long as he refuses to act, the Judiciary Committee will. Separately, the Senate Finance Committee released a report last week after an investigation into a loan Thomas received from a friend to buy a luxury Prevost marathon motor coach in 1999, a transaction that was first reported by the New York Times. The committee's Democratic staff said in the report that Thomas made some interest payments on the $267,230 loan, but that it was declared settled by his friend, Anthony Welters, in 2008 without Thomas repaying a substantial portion, or perhaps any, of the principal. High Court struggles on whether officials may block social media critics. The Supreme Court will decide several cases this term that impact the future of free speech on social media platforms. The Supreme Court on Tuesday struggled to agree on how to determine when public officials can block critics from their private social media accounts, reviewing two cases that will have broad implications for citizen interactions with politicians online. All 9 justices seem to acknowledge the challenge and importance of defining when government employees are acting in an official capacity online, and therefore bound by First Amendment restrictions on censorship, and when they are acting as private citizens, with their own individual free speech rights. But there was no clear consensus on the answer after 3 hours of oral argument. The pair of cases before the justices presented a fresh opportunity for them to consider when public officials, in this case, 2 school board members in California and a city manager in Michigan, can bar critical voices from social media accounts that are increasingly used at all levels of government to communicate with citizens. They are part of a set of legal controversies. The justices will review this term that will clarify the future of speech on social media platforms. The discussion on the bench did not break down along the usual ideological lines, but the court's 3 liberal justices voiced the strongest concerns about ensuring citizens have access to public officials and critical community information online. Justice Elena Kagan emphasized the increasing role of social media in elections and government operations. This is the forum for officials to talk to citizens, for citizens to talk to officials, for citizens to talk to each other, and it is becoming increasingly so, she said, adding that whatever rules the court writes for the future have to account for the big picture of how much is going to be happening in this forum and how much citizens will be foreclosed from participating in our democracy if they can be too easily blocked from various sites. The Biden administration backed the government officials in both cases, saying they had the right to block users from their private accounts, which they categorized as a type of private property, because they were not acting in an official capacity. Assistant Solicitor General Sopan Joshi said blocking certain users from private accounts is no different than elected officials choosing to speak only to a private room full of Republicans, or Democrats, to get their views about government policies. I understand you can think of a lot of odious behavior by government officials being discriminatory in whom they speak to and whom they listen to, but, at the end of the day, the Constitution does not prohibit even odious behavior by private citizens, Joshi said. Chief Justice John G. Roberts Jr. and Justice Samuel A. Alito Jr. pushed back on the government's suggestion that virtual social media accounts are comparable to an official's private physical property, where a politician, for instance, could hold a fundraiser or private discussion with like-minded constituents without violating the First Amendment. It doesn't cost anything to open a Facebook page, Alito said. To make so much turn on who owns the Facebook page seems quite artificial. Roberts also asked, in what sense is this really private property? It's just the gathering of the protons, or whatever they are, he said, drawing laughter from the courtroom. Should I be concerned about the fact that we have this old concept applied to what we always say is some new phenomenon? In the first case, Christopher and Kimberly Garnier, a Southern California couple who regularly posted critical messages on the Facebook pages of 2 school board members, were blocked from those pages, and then filed a lawsuit. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit sided with the Garniers in a broad ruling that said the decision of the school board members to block the couple could be considered a government action, because of the appearance and content of the school board members' Facebook pages. The board members, Michelle O'Connor Ratcliffe and T.J. Zane, regularly posted about school board meetings, surveys related to school district policy, the budget and public safety issues. Zane's page included a photo of a Poway Unified School District sign. O'Connor Ratcliffe labeled herself a government official on her page and provided a link to her school system email address. Justice Brett M. Kavanaugh pressed the attorney for the school board members about whether an official is acting in a government capacity when announcing rules, for instance, about parking during snowstorms or a town recycling schedule if the information is only available on the official's personal account, not the official government site. Local officials around the country need guidance, said Kavanaugh, whose wife is a town manager in Maryland. Hashim M. Mupan, an attorney for the board members, emphasized that government officials have the right to speak in their personal capacity about their jobs. The Garniers, according to the school board members, had spammed their accounts with repetitive, lengthy comments, leaving the same comment on multiple posts. Mupan said public officials can talk to their neighbors at church about government business or address campaign rallies without engaging in official government action. So too, he added, they can decide how to operate their private online accounts. Individuals who hold public office are still private citizens, he said. When acting in their personal capacity, they retain their First Amendment rights to decide who can participate in a community discussion that they host at their own property. The lengthy argument provided some insight into how the justices themselves use and think about social media. Justice Clarence Thomas declared himself not a Facebook person. Justice Sonia Sotomayor seemed very familiar with developments on the platform X, formerly known as Twitter, noting that it can block access, not just commenting privileges, to an account. In the second case, a different appeals court reached the opposite conclusion about when people can be blocked, based on a narrower test for evaluating the social media activity of elected officials. James Freed, the city manager of Port Huron, Michigan, was sued after he blocked a constituent's critical comments in response to a Facebook post about the city's coronavirus pandemic policies. Kevin Lindke said Freed violated the First Amendment when he deleted Lindke's comments and blocked his account. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit, however, sided with Freed, who described himself on his Facebook page as a father, husband, and city manager, and listed the city's website and general email as his contact information. Although Freed posted about city affairs, the overall content on the page he created before his appointment as city manager tended toward family activities, according to court filings. The Sixth Circuit held that a public official's social media activity is only state action when the employee is carrying out his or her official duties or acting under the government's authority. Throughout both arguments on Tuesday, the justices wrestled with how to define duty and authority. Several asked whether the terms include the customary expectations of government officials that are not specifically listed in law. This is all a question of how broadly do we define authority or duty, said Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who earlier suggested the question becomes more difficult when evaluating the actions of elected officials at the highest levels of government. For a governor or, President Trump, it's a harder call than someone like a police officer, who's a subordinate, she said. Or, my law clerk could just start posting things and say this is the official business of the Barrett chambers, right? And that wouldn't be okay, she added, with emphasis, to laughter from the courtroom. The High Court in 2021 did not take up a case in which a lower court had ruled that President Donald Trump could not block critics from his feed on Twitter. After Trump lost re-election, and Twitter canceled his account, the Supreme Court vacated the appeals court decision, saying the matter was moot. Pamela S. Carlin, co-director of Stanford Law School's Supreme Court Litigation Clinic and the attorney for the California couple, told the justices on Tuesday that the test should be to ask whether an official is doing his or her job. That prompted Alito to ask whether the local mayor at the grocery store is doing his job if he listens to supporters while he shops but tells a constituent with opposing views to call the office during normal business hours. An official pushing a shopping cart is clearly off-duty, Carlin responded. But maintaining a social media forum, in which people can comment and talk to one another about public business, she said, amounts to state action, subject to First Amendment constraints. Carlin acknowledged the free speech interests on both sides of the cases, but warned the court of devastating consequences for the public if they are denied access to the sites on which their officials are talking to them and asking for their reactions. The cases are O'Connor-Ratcliffe v. Garnier and Lindke v. Freed. Trump Jr. testifies, deflects responsibility in New York business fraud case. New York, Donald Trump Jr. testified Wednesday afternoon in a multimillion-dollar civil case that accuses him, his father and other Trump Organization executives of cheating in business deals, saying he was not directly involved in the production of financial statements. The former president's son is the first member of his family to be called as a witness by the Office of New York Attorney General Letitia James, Democrat, in its $250 million fraud lawsuit against the family and the company. James's lawsuit accuses Donald Trump and his executives of inflating his financial statements to secure better terms. During his testimony, Trump Jr. said the responsibility of preparing financial statements rested with Mazars USA, the company's longtime accounting firm. "These people had an incredibly intimate knowledge, and I relied on them," Trump Jr. said. His testimony marked the beginning of a new, more high-profile phase in the trial, in which multiple members of the family, including Trump, are expected to take the witness stand in the coming days and address the allegations against their company. Trump Jr. is one of the defendants in the trial, which began on October 2. He is expected to continue testifying Thursday and is also expected to be summoned back to the stand later in the case by his own attorneys. His brother Eric Trump, also a defendant in the case, is scheduled to testify on Thursday as well. Their father is set to testify Monday, followed by their sister Ivanka Trump 2 days later, though she is appealing an order directing her to take the stand. The family's dynamics and business's practices are expected to be on display in the coming weeks as they and the Trump Organization as a whole face scrutiny in a Manhattan courtroom. James's lawsuit alleges that Donald Trump, his executives, and his adult sons committed a decade-long fraud to inflate his net worth by billions to get better rates from lenders and insurance firms. The Trump family and their lawyers have denied any wrongdoing, with the defense maintaining that there was no fraud committed. Defense attorneys have said that real estate valuations are subjective and that lenders did not rely on Trump's annual statements of net worth to make their decisions on loans. Trump Jr. and Eric Trump, who is running the company, remain defendants in the case, while Ivanka Trump was dismissed as a defendant in an appellate decision in June. Before the trial, New York Supreme Court Justice Arthur Engoron ruled that the defendants and the company broadly committed fraud. The trial, which will be decided by the judge and not a jury, is examining whether the defendants committed specific illegal acts in the course of committing fraud. The case has the potential to essentially stifle Donald Trump's ability to conduct business in New York, by restricting the ability of officers to do their jobs and by preventing the company from obtaining new loans and from acquiring new properties. It is a civil case, not a criminal one, so no one involved faces any time behind bars as a result. When he took the stand Wednesday, Trump Jr. discussed his background, including his education and work with the Trump Organization. During his testimony, Trump Jr. said he had no significant knowledge of the accounting standards known as the Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, GAAP. Evidence at the trial has shown that financial statements prepared by the Trump Organization and distributed to business partners between 2011 and 2021 did not comply with those rules. "I have no understanding of accounting guidelines. That's what we have CPAs for," Trump Jr. said, referring to certified public accountants. Trump Jr. arrived in the courtroom with a confident stride Wednesday afternoon. While his testimony got underway, he avoided the more bombastic stance he has displayed on social media and in television interviews. He maintained his composure on the stand, though his patience seemed to wane as the questions continued throughout the afternoon. Leaving the room during an afternoon break, he paused to hover over the courtroom sketch artist's work, looking at her drawing of him. Trump Jr. and Engoron shared a laugh Wednesday over his testimony that he knows nothing about accounting rules. His only knowledge of GAAP, Trump Jr. said, is that it covers common accounting procedures. He learned that in his Introduction to Accounting course at the Wharton School years ago, he said. Trump Jr.'s father was called to the witness stand briefly last week for a much less lighthearted moment. Donald Trump was summoned in an impromptu hearing over whether he had violated a gag order Engoron imposed barring him from making public comments about the judge's court staff. The limited gag order in the case came after Trump had posted to social media about a member of the judge's staff, including a photograph. Then, last week, Trump spoke to reporters in the hallway outside the courtroom, as he often does, and assailed Engoron, a Democrat, as a very partisan judge. He also said there was a person who's very partisan sitting alongside of him, perhaps even more partisan. Engoron soon summoned Trump to the stand. Trump said his remark was not about one of the judge's staff members, but instead was aimed at Michael Cohen, a Trump attorney turned nemesis who testified earlier that same day. Trump said he was talking about Cohen, but then added of the staff member that he felt she was very biased against us. Engoron said he did not find Trump's defense credible, fining him $10,000. Trump has appeared at the civil trial several times, even though he isn't required to do so. He has grimaced during testimony, delivered campaign-style remarks to reporters outside the courtroom and complained repeatedly on social media about what he claims is improper meddling in his private business affairs by James, a Democrat. Trump, who is seeking the 2024 GOP presidential nomination, is facing 4 criminal prosecutions in other jurisdictions. He has insisted he is being targeted for political reasons. He has also criticized Engoron, calling him a political hack and protesting that some of his offspring have to appear in court. "Leave my children alone, Engoron," Trump posted on social media early Wednesday. "You are a disgrace to the legal profession." Berman reported from Washington. Trump Jr. tells court artist "Make me look sexy," points to fake SBF sketch. As former President Donald Trump's sons took the stand in the civil fraud trial against their family business, Donald Trump Jr. made a forward request to the sketch artist capturing his image and likeness in the courtroom. "Make me look sexy," he said. After Trump Jr. finished his Thursday testimony on the financial statements at the heart of the $250 million lawsuit, he approached courtroom sketch artist Jane Rosenberg and asked whether she could draw him in an overly flattering way. Rosenberg was on assignment for Reuters, the first to report on the exchange. Trump Jr. had an example of what he should look like, and it came from another Manhattan courtroom. Rosenberg said he pulled out his phone and showed her the fake courtroom sketch of Sam Bankman-Fried, the FTX co-founder who faces decades in prison after he was convicted of fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering on Thursday. He said, "Did you see the one they made of Sam Bankman-Fried? It made him look like a superstar," she recounted to Insider. Rosenberg told Reuters she quickly shot down the AI-generated sketch of Bankman-Fried, depicting him as having spiky hair and a firm jaw instead of his usual disheveled self, as being fake. "It doesn't look anything like him, doesn't look anything like Sam Bankman-Fried," she said, "and there's no one in the court." Rosenberg, a veteran courtroom artist who has drawn sketches of everyone from Tom Brady to Harvey Weinstein, depicted Bankman-Fried throughout his trial as having big ears, a protruding forehead and bulging eyes. Rosenberg did not immediately respond to a request for comment early Friday. Trump Jr. confirmed on X that he asked the artist to make him look good in his courtroom sketch. "True story," he wrote, sharing a side-by-side comparison of the fake courtroom sketch and a real photo of Bankman-Fried. "Seems like a reasonable ask." Trump Jr.'s sketch request comes as attorneys for New York Attorney General Letitia James, Democrat, have accused the former president, his sons, and their eponymous company of inflating the financial statements to secure better terms. The trial is examining the alleged long-standing practice by the Trump Organization and its executives that was done to negotiate better interest rates from lenders and to cut down on insurance policy costs. As he was questioned by Colleen Faherty, a member of James's trial team, Trump Jr. testified that he was not involved in the accounting that went into the financial statements, describing that as the work of the company's accountants. The former president's namesake mentioned to Rosenberg how he wanted a flattering sketch like Bankman-Fried's hours before the FTX co-founder was convicted. The jury's decision was reached after less than 5 hours of deliberation, with Bankman-Fried being found guilty on 2 counts of wire fraud, 4 counts of conspiracy to commit fraud and 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering. The attorney for Bankman-Fried, who is accused of being one of the largest financial fraudsters in history after victims suffered nearly $10 billion in losses, suggested that his client will appeal the conviction. Bankman-Fried's sentencing is scheduled for March 28, 2024. Rosenberg is among the most well-known courtroom sketch artists in America. In the decades after she got her start drawing prostitutes in New York's night court, Rosenberg has captured the likes of John Gotti, Woody Allen and Martha Stewart while they were on trial. Rosenberg faced some criticism a few years ago for her depiction of ugly Tom Brady during a Deflategate hearing in 2015. Her rendering of the New England Patriots quarterback made Brady, known for his handsome features, look as if he had gone through a gruesome transformation. The sketch caused a firestorm of internet memes and a deluge of nasty emails from Patriots fans. Rosenberg is also no stranger to sketching a member of the Trump family in court. When the former president was arraigned in April on 34 counts stemming from 2016 hush money payments, Rosenberg drew sketches showing Trump's anger after the first criminal charges were handed down to any former U.S. president. The sketch went viral and graced the cover of The New Yorker. In the days before Bankman-Fried's conviction, a fake courtroom sketch of him spread online that depicted him to be an Adonis, or at least an underwear model. The internet had fun over the AI-generated rendering. Why does courtroom sketch SBF look like? But the fake sketch of Bankman-Fried rankled Rosenberg, who maintained to The Independent that the AI-generated image doesn't look anything like him. Rosenberg acknowledged to the British outlet that the courtroom sketch artists said the AI image looked more like Matthew Perry, the Friends star who recently died, than Bankman-Fried. "It's not Bankman-Fried, it's not his nose, it's not his face, it's not anything," she said. "You know that AI doesn't work in courtroom art." She added, "It's so silly, this whole world of Twitter. So we're talking about nothing." Rosenberg's courtroom depictions of Bankman-Fried changed during the course of the month-long trial, with some comparing his droopy and unsettling features to that of the Scream, the 1893 composition by Edvard Munch that symbolizes the anxiety of the human condition. Like any of her other sketches, including Trump Jr., Rosenberg told The Independent that her process for drawing the real sketch of Bankman-Fried was simple, and that it wasn't her job to analyze whether defendants were tragic figures. "I just look at him and draw what I see," she said. Shayna Jacobs, Mark Berman, Eli Tan, and Tori Newmere contributed to this report. Supreme Court agrees to review gun rights challenge to bump stock ban. The Supreme Court said Friday that it would review a challenge to the federal ban on bump stocks announced by the Trump administration after the devices were used in a 2017 mass killing on the Las Vegas Strip. The Biden administration had asked the Supreme Court to reverse a lower court ruling against the ban on the devices, which speed up how quickly bullets can be fired when attached to rifles. Solicitor General Elizabeth B. Prelogar told the justices that the lower court decision threatens significant harm to public safety. Bump stocks, she said, fit the legal definition of machine guns, banned since 1986, because the devices allow a shooter to fire hundreds of bullets a minute by a single pull of the trigger. Like other machine guns, rifles modified with bump stocks are exceedingly dangerous. Congress prohibited the possession of such weapons for good reason. Attorneys for Michael Cargill, who challenged the ban after he was forced to surrender the devices in 2019, told the court that the bump stocks are useful for individuals with limited finger dexterity and noted that for nearly a decade, the federal government did not classify the devices as machine guns. Americans bought 520,000 bump stocks during the period in which the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives allowed them. The rule requires owners to either surrender or destroy devices they lawfully obtained. Those, like Cargill, who have already surrendered their bump stocks will never recover them if the rule stands. ATF admits that the expected loss of property will exceed $100 million, Cargill's attorneys said. The Supreme Court's acceptance of the case in a brief order on Friday means it will be heard and decided sometime this term, which ends in June. In October 2017, a gunman firing from a hotel near an outdoor country music festival on the Las Vegas Strip killed 58 people and wounded hundreds more before killing himself. Bump stocks found in the shooter's hotel room enabled him to fire hundreds of bullets into a crowd in minutes. The mass killing prompted then-President Donald Trump to announce that he had signed an order directing the Justice Department to change regulations to ban the devices starting in 2019. ATF amended the regulations and reclassified bump stocks as machine guns under the best interpretation of the statute. The rules were changed before the Supreme Court's significant 2022 decision on gun laws, which found a constitutional right to carry firearms outside the home and called into question other gun restrictions that did not have historical precedent. The justices are set to hear another Second Amendment case next week involving a challenge to a federal law that prohibits a person subject to a domestic violence restraining order from possessing a firearm. The challenge is based in part on the 2022 Supreme Court ruling. The bump stock ban was appealed to the Supreme Court before, after 3 appeals courts rejected challenges to ATF's final rule, but the justices did not agree to take any of those cases. This time, a district court and a unanimous panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit upheld the ban. After rehearing by a full complement of judges, the Fifth Circuit reversed in a fractured ruling. The Justice Department then asked the Supreme Court to intervene.